I used to be the guy who laughed in the face of anyone who talked about God, you know? Back in the barracks, while the others prayed before a mission, I'd make jokes, saying the only thing that saved me was my bulletproof vest and my sharp aim. Faith. What for, if we all die anyway? I'd say, and the guys would laugh, because I was good at what I did. Sergeant João, atheist to the core, raised in a family that swapped church for soccer on Sundays. For me, life was just that. Wake up early, train until you drop, drink with the guys at night, and repeat. No higher purpose. No presence of God, nonsense. I thought I was the master of my own fate, and I'd already escaped a few close calls out of sheer luck. Or at least that's what I believed back then. But deep down, there was this emptiness I never admitted. After a tense patrol, I'd stare at the ceiling of the barracks thinking, is this it? Just killing time until the next mission. I'd drink to forget, but the same hollow feeling always came back the next day. I'd see the guys with faith, the ones who carried worn-out Bibles in their pockets, and think, what a joke. That doesn't change anything. Transformation. That word didn't even cross my mind. I was the king of cynicism, the soldier who didn't need miracles to survive. But life, oh, it loves to knock you off your feet, doesn't it? And it was during a routine mission, one of those that's supposed to be easy, that everything started to crumble. I remember the briefing perfectly. Hostile area, but intel says it's clear. I laughed, adjusted my rifle, and climbed into the convoy like it was a Sunday drive. The boys were tense, but me? Calm, confident atheist, thinking danger was just a matter of statistics. If shots are fired, we fire back, I told the rookies, just to boost morale. I had no idea that day would be the spark for a change I could never have imagined. The sun was blazing, dust rising, and I sat there in the Jeep thinking about how I'd brag later that I made it out unharmed again. But fate, or maybe something greater, had other plans. As we moved across the dry terrain, I felt this strange chill, like a bad omen I quickly brushed off with sarcasm. Cut the drama, João. Focus on the mission, I told myself. My squad mates muttered quick prayers, and I rolled my eyes. To me, survival was just luck. Nothing more. I had stories of bullets grazing past without hitting me, and I credited it all to training. But out there, in the middle of nowhere, with the radio crackling orders, something in the air felt off. The wind carried a scent of danger I ignored, thinking it was just another ordinary day in the life of a faithless soldier. And then hell broke loose, literally. A deafening explosion, the Jeep blown to pieces, and me tossed into the wreckage like a rag doll. Fire everywhere, my body screaming in pain, and all I could think was, this is it, and no miracles coming to save me. Trapped in flames, no way out, crying out for help I didn't even believe existed. But then, what was that light in the middle of the chaos? Something, or someone, moving toward me, and my atheist mind started to crack. The sound hit before the pain, a thunderclap that tore through the air and threw me like a piece of paper. The Jeep was scrap metal in seconds, black smoke rising, and I was on the ground, my body burning from the inside. I tried to move, but my right leg wouldn't respond. It was twisted at an angle I can't even think about. The fire danced around me, licking the wreckage, and the heat was so intense I felt my skin melting. It's over, João. It's really over, I thought, trying to swallow the panic. Me, the tough atheist, screaming for help, not even sure who I was screaming to. Because, as far as I knew, no one was up there listening. My squad. Some of them weren't moving. Others were screaming, but the smoke swallowed everything. I dragged myself forward with my arms, inch by inch, but the flames were faster. I thought of my mother, of a childhood without church, of all those nights I said God was just a crutch for the weak. Where are you now, huh? Where's that presence of God they talk about? I shouted at the sky, hoarse, coughing up blood. But the sky didn't answer. Just the crackle of fire, the smell of burnt flesh, mine and theirs, and the certainty that this was the end. No miracle, no rescue, just the atheist soldier turning to ash. Then, a sharp pain in my head, a piece of shrapnel, maybe. My vision blurred, the world spinning, and I fell on my back, staring at the orange sky. If I die now, at least I won't feel anything anymore, I thought, almost relieved. But then came real fear. What if there's nothing after this? What if it's just darkness? I, who always denied the soul, started begging. Not to Jesus, not yet, but to something. Get me out of here. Please. It was pure instinct, you know? The body fighting to live even when the mind had given up. And the flames drew closer, closer, like they were ready to swallow me whole. I shut my eyes, waiting for the end. The heat was unbearable, my breathing fading. But suddenly, a strange calm. Like silence inside the noise. I opened my eyes slowly, and that's when I saw it. In the middle of the fire, a figure. Not a soldier, not a rescuer. Light. A radiant silhouette, walking over the flames like it was solid ground. My heart pounded. Hallucination, I thought. I'm dying and seeing things. But the figure came closer, and I felt a shiver that wasn't from the heat. It reached out a hand, and a voice, calm, firm, full of authority, echoed inside me. Get up. I brought you out of this to use you out there. I blinked, dazed. The pain was still there, but something had changed. The fire seemed to pull back? No, it didn't retreat. It just couldn't touch me anymore. The figure stood there, real, solid, and for the first time in my life, I felt fear mixed with peace. Who are you? I whispered, my voice fading. And the answer came like a gentle thunder. I am Jesus. In that moment, the atheist inside me cracked. Not completely, not yet, but cracked. Because there, between life and death, I had no more explanations. Just a hand reaching out, a promise of deliverance, and a calling I didn't yet understand. That figure in the middle of the flames. Man, I swear I thought it was the end of the line, that my mind was just playing tricks on me. But it was there, moving slowly, as if the fire was nothing more than a cool breeze. The light coming from it lit up everything, cutting through the black smoke, and I just lay there on the ground, broken and bleeding, unable to look away. My heart was pounding, a mix of terror and a peace I had never felt before. This isn't real, I kept repeating to myself, the atheist inside me fighting not to give in. But the presence was so strong, so tangible, that it felt like someone was embracing me right there in the middle of chaos. And then, the hand reached out, white, calm, calling. I stretched my arm toward it, even as pain ripped through every nerve. Did I touch it? I can't say for sure. But the moment I reached closer, a wave of coolness washed over me, like the fire had turned into mist. The voice came again, soft but firm, echoing not just in my ears, but deep inside my soul. I brought you out of this to use you out there. Who was it? Jesus. The name flashed through my mind, and I, who had always mocked other people's faith, felt a tremor run through me. A miracle. A rescue. I didn't label it then. I just felt it. My body, heavy as lead moments ago, suddenly felt lighter. The flames still roared, but they couldn't touch me anymore. It was like an invisible wall had risen around me, and I stood there in the center, shielded by something greater. I remembered stories from the unit, those guys who said they'd felt God's presence in battle. I used to laugh, call it superstition. But now I was living it. The figure didn't move with haste, it just looked at me with eyes that seemed to see everything. My disbelief, my cynicism, my emptiness. Why me? I thought, tears mixing with dirt on my face. And the answer wasn't spoken, but it was clear, purpose. Like it was telling me that my life was more than missions and bullets. That a change was waiting for me. A transformation I couldn't yet imagine. Me, the faithless soldier, starting to wonder if this was just coincidence, or something divine. While the vision lasted, time stood still. The sound of the explosion, the distant screams, all gone. Just me and that presence. I tried to speak, stammered something like, help me, and felt a force lifting me up. This wasn't a hallucination. No way. My body moved, pulled away from the blast zone, but without me doing a thing. Jesus, yes, now I dared to think the name, was guiding every invisible step. Faith. It was barely a spark, but it was being born right there, in the middle of hell. I saw flashes of my life, the empty nights, the pointless fights, and I thought, if I make it out alive, what do I do with this? A calling for something greater, a deliverance I didn't deserve. Then the figure began to fade, but the voice lingered. Go and tell what you saw. My body rolled to the side, away from the main flames, and I passed out, exhausted. When I came to, there were voices around me, paramedics shouting, but the fire still roared in the distance. How did I get there? How did I survive? The questions pounded in my head, and even through the haze, I knew this was only the beginning of something. God's presence doesn't just leave you, it stays, quietly burning inside. I woke to a ringing in my ears, my whole body aching, but alive. Alive! The sky above me was clear, no smoke, and I blinked a few times, trying to process it. Where am I? I muttered, feeling wet grass beneath my back. This wasn't the burning field. I was several meters away, in a safe zone, surrounded by medics shouting orders, sticking needles in my arm. He's awake! Sergeant João, can you hear me? One of them yelled, and I managed a weak, yeah, still dazed. How had I gotten there? My last memory was that figure in the fire, that hand reaching out, that voice promising deliverance. Jesus. It still sounded crazy to my atheist mind, but the fact was, I was there, breathing, while the inferno burned behind me. My squad mates came over, faces covered in soot, eyes wide. Man, we found you way over here, far from the blast. How'd you end up on the other side? One asked, scratching his head. I tried to explain, but the words stuck. I saw something. Someone pulled me out. They exchanged glances, probably thinking it was the trauma talking. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a delusion. That presence, the one I denied my whole life, had touched me for real. A miracle. Maybe. My faith was fragile, still just a seed, but it was growing. I looked toward the wreckage and thought, if not for that, I'd be dead. A change was coming. Subtle, like a whisper. As they loaded me into the rescue helicopter, the scene replayed in my mind over and over. The fire that didn't burn me. The figure that guided me. And now, here I was, alive. The medics checked my wounds, broken leg, minor burns, nothing fatal. You're lucky, Sergeant, one said. Lucky. I almost laughed. It wasn't luck. It was purpose. Like Jesus had chosen me for something bigger, to tell this story. Me, the guy who mocked faith, now questioning everything. What if it's real? What if this change is what I've needed all along? I thought, as the helicopter lifted off. My buddies whispered about João's miracle, and I just listened, heart pounding. Lying on the stretcher, for dripping beside me, I felt a strange peace. Not the relief of a soldier who made it out alive. Something deeper. Like a door had opened to a new world. I touched my chest, feeling the strong beat, and whispered, "Thank you, whoever you are." But deep down I knew. The voice still echoed. To use you out there. Divine deliverance. God's presence. Words I never would have used before, now circling in my mind. I looked out the little window at the sky, and for the first time, I didn't just see clouds. I saw possibility. A fragile, newborn faith. But real. Days in the hospital dragged on, and visits from my squadmates brought more pieces to the puzzle. João, intel confirmed it. You were right in the blast zone. No one survives that without help. I'd nod, still processing. My atheist mind fought it, but my heart was already surrendering. If I tell them what I saw, they'll call me crazy, I thought. But the calling was strong, pulling me toward change. I grabbed a notepad and began to write. Fragments, reflections about purpose. This wasn't ending in that hospital bed. It was just beginning. In room 412 of the military hospital, the smell of antiseptic and bandages filled the air, but what really got to me was the silence between visits. I'd stare at the ceiling, reliving the fire, the figure, the voice. I brought you out of this to use you out there. That phrase spun in my head like a mantra. My casted leg ached, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the turmoil inside. Me, Sergeant João, The guy who said faith was for people who couldn't face reality, now couldn't stop thinking about Jesus. It was like a seed had been planted in the middle of the flames, and there, in that stiff hospital bed, it had started to grow. A miracle. A rescue. I still wrestled with the words, but they kept coming. The first visit was from Corporal Marcos, the one who always carried a rosary in his pocket. He came in shyly, sat on the plastic chair, and said, "João, we measured it. You were 47 meters from ground zero. 47. No one walks that far with a broken leg and fire all around." I swallowed hard. I didn't walk, Marcos. I was carried. His eyes widened, but he didn't laugh. Carried by who? I hesitated, then said, "By someone I saw in the fire." He called me by name. The silence that followed was heavy but full of respect. Marcos just nodded, like someone who knows there are things you can't explain with an instruction manual. Then came Lieutenant Ramos, the most skeptical guy in the unit, after me. He brought the explosion report, photos of the wreckage, and pointed out, "Look here, Sergeant. Your vest's intact, but the Jeep turned to dust. And you, no serious burns. The experts can't make sense of it." I laughed nervously. "I understand even less, Lieutenant." He scratched his beard, thoughtful. "You know what the rescue guys said? They found you lying on your back, arms open, like someone had placed you there carefully. No drag marks." A shiver ran up my spine. God's presence. The phrase came without me meaning to, and I realized my transformation had already begun, whether I wanted it or not. The nights in the hospital were the worst. Alone, under the dim hallway light, I tried to rationalize it. Gases, lack of oxygen, hallucination. But then I remembered the voice. Calm, firm, full of love. It wasn't a delusion. It was real. I started asking myself questions. What if I spend the rest of my life denying this? Could I live with that? The answer hurt. No. Because the purpose I felt in the fire wasn't negotiable. It was a call to change, to leave atheism behind and embrace the faith I'd mocked for so long. I grabbed my phone, opened the Notes app, and typed, "Day 1 after the miracle. I still don't know how to pray, but I gave thanks." That was the beginning. The doctors cleared me for partial discharge, but before I left, the battalion chaplain showed up. I almost told him to go away, but something stopped me. He didn't preach, just asked, "Want to talk about what you saw?" And I broke down. I told him everything. The figure, the voice, the rescue. He listened, eyes watering, and whispered, "João, Jesus doesn't choose the perfect ones. He chooses the ones he wants to use." That hit me hard. Me, imperfect, cynical, now carrying a story that could change others. Faith grew, brick by brick, and I knew that once I returned to the base, nothing would be the same. My colleagues were already talking about the miracle soldier, and I had to decide. Was I going to embrace it or run from it? The battalion jeep stopped at the base gate, and I got out with my crutch, legs still stiff, but heart fuller than ever. The sun was blazing, just like on that fateful day, but now I saw things differently. My comrades formed an improvised corridor, shy applause, curious glances. "Welcome back, Miracle Sergeant," someone shouted, and the others laughed, but it was a laugh of relief. I smiled back, but inside was a storm. How would I tell them? How could I explain that the tough atheist now carried Jesus in his heart? The presence of God never left me. It was like a steady warmth reminding me of the rescue, of the purpose I was still learning to understand. In the mess hall, it all broke open. Packed tables, trays clattering, and me at the center, telling it out loud for the first time. It wasn't luck. I saw him. In the middle of the fire, Jesus reached out his hand and said he pulled me out to use me out there. Silence. Forks frozen midair. Corporal Marcos nodded proudly. Lieutenant Ramos raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. Someone murmured, "Amen," another said, "You're crazy." I expected mockery, but what came was respect. "Tell us more, João," they said. And I did. The voice, the peace, my body being carried away without me moving a finger. Miracle. The word came naturally, and no one laughed. My transformation was no longer a secret. That night, in the barracks, the close ones came around. "So, Sergeant, what now? You gonna become a pastor?" They joked. I laughed, but answered seriously, "I don't know what's next, but I know there's no going back." I grabbed a Bible the chaplain had left, worn, underlined, and opened it at random. It landed on Isaiah, "Do not fear, for I am with you." I cried there, hidden in my bunk. Faith was no longer theory. It was my story. I began to pray awkwardly, "Jesus, teach me what to do with this." The change was real. I, who used to drink to forget, now fasted with questions. I, who mocked prayer, now asked for direction. The next day, light training. I was limping, but led the rookies with new authority. "Listen, guys. Life's fragile. I know that better than anyone." I told parts of my story, without preaching. One kid, Private Lima, pulled me aside. "Sergeant, I used to doubt too. But after what happened to you, can I go to the chapel today?" My heart leapt. Purpose revealing itself. It wasn't just about me. It was about using my rescue to ignite faith in others. That afternoon, I sat with the chaplain and asked, "How do you get baptized?" He smiled. "First, you decide for real." I decided. In my soul, it was already done. The news spread through the base. João found Jesus. Some clapped, others just watched. I didn't care. God's presence was my shield. I started leading a small prayer group before missions, just 5 of us at first. I stammered, but spoke about the miracle, the transformation. If he pulled me out of the fire, imagine what he can do for us here. Faith spread, and I saw in their eyes the same light I'd felt in the hospital. But there was still one more step, telling my family and the world beyond the base. The barracks were just training. The real mission was about to begin. I left the base gates with my medical release in my pocket and a new Bible in my backpack. The world outside felt bigger, louder, more alive. The city, the traffic, the rushing people, all shouting, "Go back to normal, João." But I wasn't the same. The fire had burned away the atheist I'd been, leaving a man with a scar on his leg and a flame in his chest. Jesus didn't save me, so I'd stay quiet. "Use you out there," he said. And out there began at my home, with my mother, who never understood why I'd run from her church. I showed up unannounced. She opened the door, eyes wide, and hugged me so tight the crutch almost fell. "Son, thank God," she cried. I laughed, awkwardly. "Mom, that's exactly what I came to talk about." We sat in the same old kitchen, the smell of coffee in the air, and I told her everything. The explosion, the fire, the radiant figure, the voice. She listened, hand over her heart, tears streaming. "I've always prayed for you, João. Always." Then it hit me, those prayers I used to call a waste of time, had followed me through hell. I asked her forgiveness right there. "Mom, teach me how to really pray." She smiled, took my hand, and for the first time I said, "Amen," without irony. Days later, I met up for coffee with my childhood friends, the ones I used to drink with and make fun of religion. I got there early, heart pounding. When I told them, the silence was heavy. One laughed. "You're kidding, João. You. The king of atheism." But I didn't back down. I showed them photos of the wreckage, the medical report, the scar. "Look. 47 meters. I didn't walk. I was carried." The laughter died. Another friend, Paulinho, lowered his head. "Man, my wife's got cancer. If this is real," I grabbed his hand. "It's real. And Jesus still works miracles today." That coffee was the first seed I planted outside the base. The transformation wasn't mine alone. I started speaking in small churches, youth groups, even in a bar I used to hang out at. I was like you, thought faith was weakness. Until the fire showed me who's in charge. People listened, eyes glistening. Afterward, a teenager came up to me. "Sergeant, I want that presence of God. How do I start?" I smiled, remembering my clumsy prayer in the barracks. "Start by thanking him for being alive." Then open the Bible. The rest, he'll handle. The purpose kept growing. Every testimony I shared sparked another. Deliverance wasn't just physical. It was spiritual, daily. Today, I walk with my leg almost healed but my soul whole. I'm still a soldier, but now I fight a different battle. To tell the world that Jesus walks through the fire, that faith isn't a crutch, it's strength. The change didn't stop. It became a mission. And you, listening to this, have you ever thought about where you'd be without the deliverance you might not even have noticed? Because he's right there, hand extended, waiting for you to say, yes.